Welcome to Smoke Signals, everyone. I'm Matt Montgomery, along with head football coach and athletic director Wayne Coleman. Jacksonville at home last week against Whitehouse, and coach didn't get it done. Whitehouse came in, and of course they won the previous week, their first game. So it was a good matchup, but in the end, they ended up making more plays.
They did. They had a couple big pass plays they made on us, and then we turned the ball over. So I mean, you can't. It's a bad combination: explosive plays and turnovers.
I think the difference in the game for them was their sophomore quarterback, Josh Green. I mean, he did a nice job. He threw the ball well. Wasn't expecting him to throw it that well. I thought the other guy was the throwing quarterback, but he did a nice job throwing the ball, and he also had some nice runs, and he was hard to contain.
He had done a really good job. You can tell he's getting more comfortable playing varsity football. He looked a lot more experienced than what you thought you would see out of a sophomore.
And you ran the ball well. We'll see some highlights here. Darian Hinton over 100 yards. Jacksonville hadn't had a guy over 100 yards since week one. Been throwing the ball mainly, but the running game looked good.
We focused a lot on it, and then Ryan getting injured kind of put a little more emphasis on the running game, and some of the kids stepped up and had some good runs.
You went into the ball game, you knew you were going to play Tony Pinson some and run some Wildcat, but then when Ryan gets hurt, now everything changes. And you have to have that backup plan. And of course, Tony threw the ball. He was 8 out of 12 for 90 yards and 2 scores.
No, he did a great job, and he's a senior, and he played almost every game as a sophomore as the JV quarterback. So he's got some background there. We knew he'd perform well.
Let's take a look at some of the highlights. Jacksonville versus Whitehouse. There's a big 22-yard run by Darian.
Yeah, nice hole there by the O-line, and Darian, the first guy, never brings him down. Tough runner.
There's a TFL by Coda. This is Darius Hinton.
Coda had a good game defensively.
Here's John Johnson getting into the defensive action with a pick.
Yeah, I teased John about how bad that pass was for him to be able to intercept it, but he
did.
did.
Quacking a little bit.
Yeah, he made the play.
What a nice block here by Alexis, and it helps Hinton get 21.
Yeah, Alexis wrapped around on the play side linebacker, and Darian finished it off.
There's a little hot route here, Pinson to McEwen. Nice little move.
Yeah, nice play by Devin. We weren't able to get him the ball much. They doubled him a lot.
Tony gets rid of the ball really quick right here and hits Calvin for a 32-yard score.
Yeah, he did a really good job just coming in, executing. We call that a 50-50 ball, give our guy a chance to win.
Yeah, and going into the game, everybody coming in, they know they have to stop number 14 for Jacksonville, Devin McEwen. And boy, they did a good job, didn't they? They stayed on him. And boy, every time you saw him going on the go route, that safety was coming over and they shaded him. And you had mentioned you think maybe that might have helped your running game some.
There's no doubt. When you start putting 2 guys on Devin, that opens up some of those run lanes, and that's why Darian was able to have so much success. The difference really was us holding on to the football. I mean, we could have very well won that game just running the ball if we'd have held on to it.
So this week, Coach, Mount Pleasant to finish the season. You go into this ball game, obviously not with a chance to make the playoffs, but you do have something to play for. You and that I want to talk to you about that in this last week and talking with your players and what to play for. They win, they're in. They don't win, then they have to have some help to get in. So some things to play for your football team.
Yeah, we can play spoiler. Mount Pleasant, is trying to make the playoffs, and they're in a good situation. But if we get the W over them, they may not make it.
Of course, they jumped out. Mount Pleasant did last week to a pretty good lead on Pine Tree, and Pine Tree kind of snuck up at the end. They got beat 35-28. Mount Pleasant got the win. And I watched some of the film, Coach, and I don't know what's going on in 9-5A Division II, but the defensive lines, just about every team is loaded on the defensive front, and no doubt Mount Pleasant may have the best one. They've got a D1 kid up there that is just amazing, 3-year starter.
Yeah, 99's got a lot of offers, and he's a load. So you got to be very selective about how you want to run the ball against him.
So going in the ball game, I know Ryan was hurt last week. Some tweaking, some changes this week offensively. What will you do to attack Mount Pleasant offensively, maybe with some personnel changes?
I think we have to try to build on that run game that we got going last week, and if they're going to double Devin, we're going to have to keep establishing the run, and at this time take better care of the football.
I know you started the season wanting to play, guys at the 5A level. You try to play guys one way. but not everybody's, Texas High where you have 80 players. And so it's come down to several of your players are playing both ways, and I really haven't noticed much of a drop-off in their production by having to go both ways. I'm talking about, Darion and Devin's playing some in the backfield, and Isaiah as well.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those deals as the season progresses. You get your legs under you and the weather starts cooling off. Everything happens kind of at the same time. So a kid that might only be able to handle 60 plays in week 1 is able to handle 100 plays in week 8. And so luckily, Darion is in 5A football, you shouldn't be starting your Mike linebacker at running back also. But injuries and depth, that
necessity.
Yeah, it's just where we're at, and he's done a good job there. And Devin's making plays on defense. We're crossing over a bunch of kids. Spoonie's playing both ways. Aiden Gay played center and defensive line. That's just where we're at, and we've got to deal with it.
Offensively, what does Mount Pleasant do?
Very multiple. They'll go with no tight ends, and then they'll go with 2 tight ends or 3 tight ends. They'll go unbalanced formations. They're going to make you line up to a whole bunch of different sets. They want to run the ball to win the game, but they're not afraid to spread it out.
Mount Pleasant always seems to have, of course, they have an outstanding basketball program, and they always seem to have those athletes, particularly in the defensive backfield. They've got some cats back there that are long. Will you be able to attack them throwing the ball?
I think they've got a lot of kids that they'll rotate in the secondary. They are long. They've got some good-looking receivers and DBs. We've got to find our matchups, and like the 50-50 ball we saw there a second ago that Calvin made the play on, we've got to take our shots on those when we get the chance.
So what are the keys for your team to play Spora this week against Mount Pleasant?
I think it's just like last week, develop a run game. But this week, take care of the ball. And ball security, a lot of times, is a matter of repetitions. Darion hasn't had to carry the ball that many times in a game, so he's still getting used to that part of the game.
We look at statistics all the time, and every week, pre-game, I'll go over all the stats for both teams and looking at things. And boy, stats can just make you, especially as you get late in the season, you can look at these stats and you can say, wow, Jacksonville's had 46 more offensive plays. You've had time of possession more. You would think if you were looking at that, later on, you'd think, it would be better. But, stats don't tell the whole story, particularly when the other team makes big plays.
Yeah. In coaching, the 2 stats that you worry about the most, I think, as far as finding success, is turnovers and explosive plays by your team. And just like indicated last week, Whitehouse had more explosive plays and we had more turnovers. Yeah. And that's really the difference in the game. And you could you could take 1 explosive play away from them and 1 turnover away from us, and that 28-14 games, 21-21. So it doesn't take very much to tilt things, no matter what all the other stats are.
Last thing, Coach, last ball game, seniors playing their last game. We talked about them playing the Spora role. What are you going to talk to your team about this week in finishing and making sure that they send them into the off season? Seniors playing their last game, but also the underclassmen playing well to go into the off season. What's the play for is what I'm trying to say.
No, I think it's we already have the mentality of we're going to fight to the last second on the clock, and that includes the last game of the season. Our kids haven't given up. They played last week, all the way to the end. They just keep battling. Texas High, they battled all the way to the end. That's who they are. They've got a great sense of fight in them. Their character is such that they're not going to lay down. They're going to go up there and try to spoil Mount Pleasant's playoff hopes.
It's Jacksonville versus Mount Pleasant in the season finale, and Mount Pleasant will be online at 6:45 on jhs-sports.com. For head coach Wayne Coleman, I'm Matt Montgomery. We'll see you next time right here on Smoke Signals.